Alrighty, this is not going to be a long video today. This is going to serve as a friendly reminder of something you already know, that you already understand, that you've heard me talk about before, and that is that the body requires progressive overload, but does not require aggressive overload. And that's one of my favorite quotes to remember, that when it comes to training, training is not a race, training is not a performance, training is not a competition, training is all about gaining. Training is all about progressive overload. So I want to use a quick visual example, and this is just to think. Sometimes we get so zoomed in that we need to zoom out, right? It's easy to miss the forest for the trees, and once we start learning about muscles, joints, connective tissue, hamstrings, calves, Achilles tendons, it's easy to lose track of the big picture, which is the goal of training is to gain. It's to progress. It's to be more, stronger, faster, better than you were last year, right? And we want to continue to do that for years. So often we get stuck in, well, where am I going to be 12 weeks from now versus where I'm going to be 12 months from now? Where am I going to be 3 months from now versus 3 years from now? So let's look at this example, and let's say this is time and this is gains. We have a theoretical genetic limit, right? There are genetic limits to just what we can gain. So let's say theoretically that this line that I'm drawing represents the perfect world. So you have unlimited time to train. You do everything right. Everything's optimized. Every exercise is perfectly optimized for what your needs are, what your constraints are, what your limits are, what your limitations are. Every set, every rep, every workout is perfect. Your nutrition, perfect. Your sleep, perfect. You can realize how that we're never going to be able to attain this. So let's call this perfect. And you know me, I love drawing because it makes me feel better. And one of these days, I promise I'll get a mouse so I can draw quicker. So this is theoretical perfect. And that represents over time the gains that we could get if we did everything possible. And we would have to be omnipotent like God to know how to perfectly program. And it's because we're humans. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna err. We have pride issues. We can't. We're not patient. So since we're human, we're going to err, and we will not do this. Well, what people try to do is, I'm going to change my color here. What people try to do is they try to aggressively overload. And so what that looks like is, this is perfect. So a lot of people try to do, they try to literally go crazy, where, in 12 weeks, they try to get the performance gains of 12 months. So what happens is they try to do everything they can to win every workout. They treat every workout like a race, every set and rep like a max effort. And then what happens is we can't do this. It's not realistic. So then, because we don't have perfect sleep, perfect nutrition, perfect range of motion, perfect connective tissue, perfect tendons, you get what I'm going for, we're going to get pain, we're going to get problems, we're going to get injured, and so we might get sick from overtraining. That happens a lot with pro endurance athletes. We might blow up our shins, and then we can't run. And then what happens is, let's say we get injured or we get sick, or we have to take time off training, or we have to take time off deadlifting because we hurt our back. Well, all of a sudden now we're going to experience less gains, and now we're down here, and then we continue on. Now we try to get it back, we try to get it back, we try to get back, and then people try to get back, and then all of a sudden they maybe make the injury that was a 6-week injury, a 6-month injury, and now they're like, wow, I can't touch a barbell at all, or else my knees are going to blow up. So maybe they get a tendinopathy in their tendon because they just are trying that. So now they're here, and now gains. And so what I want you to think is, the thing to focus on is this right here is the delta, which is the change. And that is going to be, right, the delta is how far away from perfect we would be. And this is a lot like most people's trainings, right? Is they have an amazing week where they act like Rocky Balboa and Rocky 4 trying to beat the Russian, and they just go crazy because they think the harder they train, the more they gain. And that's true up until a certain point, or up until their body cannot keep up with the demands or the recovery. So a lot of people have these heroic workouts, heroic weeks, because they think, oh, if I just smash myself in this one interval set, or if I just crush myself in this set of squats, I'm going to get astronomically more gains than if I just showed a little bit of restraint. So then they have a monumental week, and then they don't have a good week. They go even crazier, and then this is like their training, and then all of a sudden they have to pull it back. And if you actually look, as time goes on, they're actually have quite a large delta from what would be perfect. So this example is what almost everyone does, because they think each week you have to aggressively overload, right? They treat each workout like a competition. They treat each cardio session like a race. Remember, the goal of training is simply to progress. And we need to just simply change small things each time. So if we look at the green, well, if we take someone and then we put it in, let's put it in blue. Let's say this person is just trying to chug along here, and they are progressing slowly. So they're progressing a lot slower than the other person. But then, so maybe this is, like I said, maybe right here is like 12 weeks. So in the first 12 weeks, this person A is exponentially stronger, faster, better than person B. And I know this isn't to scale. This is just a visual example. But then what happens, like I said, then because of that, because they are aggressively overloading, because their body cannot keep up with the demands, because their joints and connective tissue are falling to pieces, then all of a sudden they have to decrease the demands on their body to allow their body to rehab or recover, or to regain qualities that it's lost, or capacity that it no longer has, or to get more capacity. And then this person's just chugging along, and then one more time. So now the second person is doing better, but then because this person didn't cause any serious injury, they're right back at it, aggressively overloading. So depending on what workout you would look at, or what week, you would say, well, this person's crushing all their training. Now, caveat, yes, we need to train hard. Yes, it takes a lot of hard training to change the human body. You cannot become a 2-hour marathoner just by relaxing, doing a bunch of easy zone 2 runs. You have to train hard. But there's a difference between training hard and training aggressive. Okay? There is a difference. And there's a difference between when we train hard, we limit volume, and we don't try to just see how tired we can get. But if we look, then, like I said, let's say this is, I don't know, right here. This is 1 year. So person B was just chugging along, and they were training hard, but they weren't selling their soul. They weren't going crazy. They weren't doing stuff that would be super impressive on Instagram. Most of their workouts were just a simple step forward. Most of their runs might have just been a little bit harder, not anything crazy. And then after a year, here's what I want you to think. Person B is now exponentially in their, not only are they actually exponentially better, I can't talk this morning, I haven't had my coffee yet. Not only are they exponentially, gosh dang it, exponentially better than A at the year mark, their overall delta, which is the difference between perfect and what they do, is smaller over time. That's the big thing I want you to realize. And then most likely what would happen is A would say, let's say this is for, I don't know, barbell squatting. And A has had knee issues and back issues. So let's say that this was a knee issue, and then let's say this was they kind of jacked their back, and then here all of a sudden their knee goes again, and then they say, okay, well, I'm not barbell squatting for the next 12 weeks, 6 months, because they have to regain their back. If you sell your joint health and connective tissue health for performance, you're going to have to sell your performance to get your joint health and connective tissue health back. So let's say lifter B was just chugging along nice and slow. Well, eventually that becomes a snowball and an avalanche. And then if you look, eventually the person who is progressively overloading is progressing. They're still not perfect, and there's still going to be ebbs and flows. So lifter B would still be going through the normal ebbs and flows of life. But minimizing the delta from perfect is what we really want, because remember, I don't want you thinking, where am I at 12 weeks? I want you to think, where am I going to be at in 12 months? How am I going to progress this squat for 2 years? How am I going to progress my long run for 3 years? How am I going to progress these intervals over the next 6 months? So I want you to think, where am I at 3 years from now? Not where am I at next Tuesday, right? And since everyone thinks in like 8 to 12 week chunks, they don't think about, well, this is a little bit of the tortoise and the hare, where lifter B is the tortoise and ends up generally winning the race. And it's not because lifter A was doing anything wrong. It's because if we try to aggressively overload, pain problems and plateaus will show up, and then we have to decrease the demands to let capacity catch back up or to get rid of the injury or issue. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes, and of course I talked probably twice as long as I should have, to said something simple, is we want to focus on progress and success. That doesn't mean that we don't train to failure. It doesn't mean that we don't train hard. But your measure of success in a workout should be progress, right? Unless we are trying to go to failure for a specific cause or reason or adaptation. And so it might not be sexy if in your workout you did 5 sets of 5 last week and this week you do 5 sets of 6, and you're like, well, yeah, last week wasn't even that crazy. Yeah, think about it like this. Let's say you started off by running 1 minute a day, okay? And then every month you ran 5 more minutes, right? So you start off running 5 minutes. Well, a year later, now you're doing over an hour long run. Okay, that would be extremely slow. Well, now picture you do that again for the second year. Now you're doing 2 hour long runs. Now picture you do that again. Now you're doing 3 hour long runs. Now that sounds extreme. 3 years sounds like an eternity in training world, but imagine that. Imagine if all you did was say, every month I'm going to run every day, and every month I'm going to add 5 minutes to my run. That would be, now, do we have to do that? No, that's a little bit of an extreme. I'm using that as an example to create a dichotomy in your head of like the extreme polarization. But imagine if you did that for 3 years, you were just chugging along. Eventually you'd be running 21 hours a week in 3 years. Most professional runners are not running 21 hours a week unless they're like a serious ultra runner who's doing like high volume for ultra runners, like in the 25 hours a week, but that's like super insane ultras. Most pro runners are around 12 to 14 hours a week of running. So picture you are 27 and you spent 3 years slowly progressing. Then all of a sudden you're 30 and now you can run for 21 hours a week. Now, this example doesn't work perfectly. It's a very shitty, poor example, but it's to get you to realize that slow progress, easy mode, least mode is better than beast mode. Beast mode is fun, and we do need to train hard, and we do need to put ourselves in hard situations to check our ego, to know where we're at. Obviously, if we don't ever go to failure or don't go to our maximums or don't do a hard workout, we don't know where we're at in space. So don't get me wrong. Don't listen to this lecture and say, well, Taylor's saying that we should never train hard, we should never go to failure, our workouts are never going to suck and be challenging. And remember that no. I'm trying to get you to think about progressive overload is superior to aggressive overload in the long run. In the short run, aggressive overload always seems like it's the better option. But if we look at kind of lifter A or lifter B or runner A or runner B has less of a delta from theoretical genetic perfect or perfect plan. In the long run, they will win. In the long run, they'll be able to do more, be more, and guess what? Everyone knows how shitty and horrible this cycle of injury is, where you're feeling strong and then all of a sudden your back goes out, or you tweak your knee and then all of a sudden you can't squat. It is far better to say I'm going to exercise restraint and patience, and realize that training is about gaining. Training is not a demonstration of strength or a demonstration of speed or a demonstration of power. It is developing speed, developing power, developing your aerobic capacity. So strength training should be about adaptation, not demonstration. Training should be about gaining, right? Versus showing. I also like to ask myself, when I go to train, am I here to test my limits? And if I am, let's go. Or am I here to expand my limits? And there's a difference. Now, the workouts could look very similar, but there is a big difference between those two workouts. And every workout you spent testing your limits is at least 2 to 3 that you could have spent expanding your limits, because when you test your limits, you better recover, or else you're going to run into this injury cycle where you keep getting injured, you keep pissing off your shoulder, and then people are blaming their shoulder instead of blaming their inability to be patient, their inability to train their joints and connective tissue, and all that stuff. So this is a simple lesson. This is a short video, but I wanted to start off today to zoom out, because I've got to constantly zoom in to teach you what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it. Here's what the joint does, but then we need to zoom out and think of the big picture. And the big picture is, where am I at 3 years from now, not where am I at 3 months from now. Now, we need to have a game plan of where we're going to be 3 months from now, but I want you to think long term. And whoever has the smallest delta from perfect is going to be the person who progresses the most. Not in the short run. Not in the short run. The long game is the game. And easy mode and least mode is better than beast mode in the long run. So this is a little bit of words of wisdom, and I hope you have a great start to your Monday.